You know, Olivia, from references to the Titanic and Starship Enterprise to Mrs. Josephine Teo and even Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong having tearful moments, there have been so many key moments this week.
With a record 10 opposition MPs as well in Parliament, the debate on policy issues has been very passionate and vigorous. Well, leader of the House Ms Indranee Rajah sat down with our colleague, multimedia journalist Dylan Ang to wrap up the week.
Good evening, Minister. Thanks for joining us. Now, before we dive deeper into the key issues debated in Parliament this week, what are your thoughts on the parliamentary performance of the newly elected MPs?
Well, I actually thought it was a good showing by all the new MPs on both sides of the House, whether it's front bench or back bench, and whether it be PAP MPs or opposition MPs. You could see that they were very passionate about the subject matters that they chose. Many had personal anecdotes. You know, they reflected issues which some of them, you know, got from their residents, and many of them from their life experience as well. So I think it was heartfelt, and it augurs well for the 14th Parliament.
Now, Minister, what do you think are three key issues that the government now has to tackle, you know, after the following the debate and concerns raised by MPs in the last few days?
Listening to the speeches and hearing the concerns from our citizens outside the chamber, I think that there are three key issues. The first is jobs, or I should say jobs, and jobs, because that's very much at the top of people's minds. And obviously, when you have a global recession like the current one, and there's competition for jobs and resources, people obviously feel, you know, a sense of angst, insecurity, and they're really, really anxious if they look like they're going to be losing their job. So we have to put a lot of attention on that. Minister Josephine Teo had answered lots of parliamentary questions on that today, and also in her speech the previous day. So that's the first one, jobs. The second is on a fair and just society. That has actually been the goal of Singapore from the time of independence. But what is fair and just in one era may not necessarily be the same in another era, because when we started off, I think large part of our population not so well off. However, as we have become more developed as a country, as our people too as their lives have improved, the gap between those who do well and the small group that's left behind stretches out. And we don't want that kind of inequality, and that's one of the reasons why we paid a lot of attention to it. In fact, in the 13th Parliament, when Parliament had prorogued and we came back with a debate on the President's address, even at that time, combating inequality was identified as an issue that has carried over into this term, into the 14th Parliament. So we must continue. And what's different is that in this term of Parliament, because of COVID-19, it made things worse. Those, you know, who are less advantaged felt the impact even more than those who have additional resources. Then I think the third thing is our sense of identity. Who are we as a people? What do we stand for? Are we united as a people? The direction that we want to move in? There's a sense of a generational, if not change, certainly a generational difference. Every generation has events that are particular to them. So you hear it in the language that is used, you know, boomer, millennials, Gen Z. That's one way of classifying them. But it's also the kind of issues that are important to each group. So things which may be very important to the group 50 and above may not be so important to those in their 20s, and vice versa. But there may be some things which are universal. So it's getting that sense of that generational difference, and to make sure that no matter what, we are able to progress together as one people and united, not polarized.
Now, Minister Iswaran said earlier today that the government will consider the live streaming of Parliament. What are your specific thoughts on this? What are issues that need to be considered? Do you think, for instance, the global tech trend of other countries live streaming their proceedings, as well as the risk of parliamentarians playing to the gallery?
Right. So when Minister Iswaran spoke about it just now, he explained that we had reservations, which remain, but we are also cognizant of the fact that, we know that in this day and age, everything gets streamed, almost instantly. People want information almost immediately, and people want to see what's happening, what's going on as it happens. So we've taken that on board, and that's why we say that we will, prepared to make this move, but we have to study it and see how to implement it in a way that works well. What you don't want is, you don't want MPs playing to the gallery, as you rightly pointed out, but what you do want is people to be able to watch and to see, oh, this is how Parliament works, and this is how this is the speech that so-and-so made, and this was the response that was given. Does it make sense? So, they're you have to hold things in balance, but what we want to do is do it in the right way.
Now, just to wrap up, what do you think of the tone displayed in the House over the past few days? Does it set a healthy precedent for future sittings?
And, well, I think what you've seen in the last few days is a new term of Parliament with new members finding their way. I've been in Parliament for a few terms now, and at the beginning of each term, especially when you see the newer members perform, you have to find that rhythm, that equilibrium. So, for example, some may ask a lot of questions, some may ask fewer. There'll be a bit of cut and thrust. I think definitely in this Parliament there'll be a lot more questions. I think people have seen that already. More clarifications being asked on speeches that are given on both sides. Two ministers, by ministers, two MPs, and from opposition MPs to PAP MPs and vice versa. So we've seen that. I think we can expect more of it. What I hope will happen is that everyone gets better at it, so that in terms of time management and in terms of really being able to crystallize the issue and get the thing spot on, that is something that will improve over time. It's inevitable. It's like when you go to a new school and then you meet your classmates for the first time. People are making friends, getting to know each other, the little bit of, jostling here and there, then after a while everybody settles and moves ahead.
Well, thank you, Minister, for taking the time to speak with us.
No worries.